What would you say to a new kayak or, anyone in an extreme sport or doing anything that they're afraid of to give them the courage to face it?
I think the biggest thing is definitely for anyone in extreme sports, but just anyone that's trying to push themselves, always make sure it's for the right reasons. And remember that all of us are scared. Like, we're not immune to it. The fear is never going to go away. Usually, if there's something really big and challenging and you're not scared at all, that might mean you're not looking at all the variables correctly. Or whereas when you're scared, you're noticing something, and that usually will guide you to make the best decision possible. And so for a lot of people, I would say just remember that even those of us that reach the highest level we try to, does not mean that we're not scared. The fear never goes away. Always make sure that it's actually something you feel ready for and excited about the idea of what you're doing, not just what it's going to feel like when it's done.
Yo! Action.
Action. Hiya.
Hey, whoa, what happened to you?
I took a wave to the face.
Oh, was that surfing yesterday?
Yeah, it was. You did this.
Oh, I'm sorry.
What happened?
We were tandem surfing, and Kat was on the front of the board. I was on the back of the board, and as we're paddling back out to the lineup, there's some pretty heavy bombs coming through, and we were like punching through the wave as it was about to break. So we made it through, though, and we didn't get totally wrecked.
You didn't get totally wrecked. I blocked it for you.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
Punishments. I'll get you.
Oh, God.
It's coming for you.
I haven't even seen the worst of it yet, huh? Mm-mm. Oh, man.
But never fear. This will be off tomorrow. It's but a flesh wound.
Yeah, but a flesh wound. We'll go tandem surfing again tomorrow.
No. Okay, fine, but I'm in the back.
Oh, yeah. You get to be in the back. Sick. All right, let's try it.
I'm going to have a little motor.
Yeah. A motor. Yeah.
Since I can't paddle as well as you.
Well, yeah.
Welcome to the BeRad Podcast. Thanks for tuning into this episode. Today, you're going to be listening to Dane Jackson, who is a professional whitewater kayaker, arguably best in the world. I mean, is it even arguable? He is the best in the world.
No, yeah, he's without a doubt the most well-known and best whitewater kayaker in the world. The only other one that has his sort of status was probably his dad prior to him. His father's like the second most winningest whitewater kayaker in the world. But I'm a whitewater kayaker nerd, so I'm real lucky. I got linked up with Dane through some of my friends here in Hawaii, and man, what an epic guy. He's an amazing athlete.
Yeah, the conversation's easy when you're talking to an extreme athlete. It was such a fun time. I wish I had another 2 hours of conversation. We almost missed our flight because I was blabbing.
We were going all over the place, man. But that was really fun. That was really, really cool. And I learned a lot. I mean,
tune in to hear about his relationship to fear while dropping 100-foot waterfalls, how it relates to his nerves before competition, how he didn't get burnt out in the sport, which is something that I was super interested in, also as an extreme athlete who has extreme tendencies. I learned a lot from this guy, and that's my goal of this podcast, is to, as an athlete and as a high performer, to learn from other high performers, so I can make myself better. And I really felt like I learned a lot from Dane.
Yeah, thank you, Dane. It was an amazing podcast that you guys did. So.
Yeah, and awesome thanks to our sponsor,
Delta G. Delta G. Yeah, this stuff is bomb.
Yeah, I was just telling you that I've been taking it almost every day, and I had a 2-week comparison, and 1 week I had a higher resting heart rate. It was like 57 beats per minute, and I just recorded all on my Garmin, and I was noticing the stats. And then the week afterward, after taking Delta G every day after a workout, and then also in my coffee, with the coffee booster, which I've just fallen in love with, Yeah, I know, right?
Kat, you think she has lots of energy now. Wait till you see Kat with the Delta G coffee booster in her coffee. It's next level.
Yeah.
Buckle your seatbelts, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, it takes me to the moon.
To the moon.
I love it.
Yeah.
But it went from my resting heart rate over the course of a 7-day period, went from 58 beats per minute, or 57 maybe actually, to 48 beats per minute resting.
Wow.
Which is a huge difference, and like that's a measurement of how well I'm recovering. So like, you know, TBD, still taking it during running. I haven't, you know, while I've seen the benefits, I haven't been able to take it successfully while during my runs, but like the recovery benefits, I just have been so blown away by. And that, you know, that's like real tangible evidence that I was stoked to see during some really big training, you know, biggest training I've done in a while. So shout out to Delta G.
Dr. Coach Kat always telling me the real improvement is when you recover effectively.
Stress plus rest equals growth, baby.
Yeah, rest that neck, baby.
I'm resting the neck now.
Rest the neck.
So I can grow it tomorrow.
It's gonna get longer and stronger.
Check out the link in our bio and in the show notes to get your own Delta G ketones. And thanks for tuning into the podcast. Enjoy.
Aloha. Thank you.
Aloha. Awesome. Welcome to the BeRad Podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm your host, Kat, and with me I have Dane Jackson, professional whitewater kayaker for Red Bull and GoPro, two really big names. I'm sure they feel good to feels good to represent those brands.
Oh yeah, 100%. Definitely helped with a lot of opportunities that I wouldn't have had if I didn't have big supporting brands like that.
Yeah, cool. So something I always like to ask my guests is, because, you know, Googled you before the podcast, know who you are, you kayaked with Carson the other day. But how would you describe yourself to the community?
Well, in the end, like you said, I'm a whitewater kayaker. I've been kayaking since I was about 2 years old. My dad's a professional whitewater kayaker as well, multiple-time world champion. My sister is a world champion. Brother-in-law is a world champion. So my entire life has been surrounded by kayaking. When I was born, my dad had just, he used to be a professional slalom kayaker, and he went to the 92 Olympics and all that. And then when I grew up, we actually lived full-time in an RV for about 6 years, meaning that we didn't have a house anywhere. So when I was about 4 till I was about 10, we lived full-time, no house, wherever seemed like the best place to go with the family, or wherever my dad wanted to go kayaking, that's where we were going. And then in 2003, we moved to Tennessee, but even after we moved there, we had a house there, but we still spent most of the year in the RV. And to this point, that's still what my lifestyle is. I'm in the RV about 10 months out of the year, away from Tennessee, and then maybe 2 months out of the year I'm in Tennessee, and even then I'm living in the RV with my fiance. So the full, it's not really describing myself. In the end, I'm a professional whitewater kayaker. I travel the world chasing whitewater, waterfalls, things like that, but I'm also a videographer, I'm a photographer, trying to learn Illustrator. I got no After Effects, I'm an editor. I just try to do basically everything I can. Wow,
that's crazy. So then, you know, something I'm so curious about is like, does your day-to-day look like in the RV?
I mean, a day-to-day, the nice thing about my lifestyle, which I'm really fortunate about, is that the day-to-day really, it pretty much never looks the same. It's very rare that I'm either consistently in one spot or consistently doing the same thing every day, whether it's as simple as kayaking a different spot, or maybe one day I'm editing a video like my highlight reels at the end of the year, or a big trip that I just got back from making that edit, or it's me trying to learn some more Illustrator to help make some new shirts for my friends and I's apparel company, or it could be simply meetings to design new kayaks or what kayaks we're doing next. It's day to day for me. It's I'm either chasing the whitewater or I'm on my way to the next place I want to go whitewater, whether it's driving across the country. Me and my fiance, we do about 30,000 miles a year traveling around the U.S. And then if we're not driving, we're flying elsewhere. So my day-to-day, it changes a lot. Depends on what I'm in the mood for. Am I looking for a little bit of downtime, which never really actually happens?
Yeah.
Or I'm like, you know what, I'm really ready to go run a waterfall, so I start planning the next trip. Whatever it is, the day-to-days change a lot. It just kind of depends on the time of the year and what I'm kind of feeling.
You know, that's so interesting. I hear a lot in that. And something that stood out to me is someone who's a professional runner, but my day is like crazy. My day is a little bit more consistent than yours because I have to train,
right.
You know, and then it all comes together to race. But like, I'm coaching also. I'm doing social media, which is something that's not my strong suit. You know, I'm just kind of getting into the groove, and I feel like it's because I didn't grow up with it. And
right.
But you sound, you know, as a professional kayaker, and from what I've heard, you have gained most of your notoriety in the kayak world by producing these really incredible videos, and to showcase that you're a world-class athlete. And how do you juggle that, being a business owner with your apparel company and kayaking, to like do what you love and then also do all these like random other things? For me, it's a lot to juggle. Maybe I'm just tired all the time from running.
I think you can definitely relate. Everyone has their own hustle when it comes to whatever, to make it work for whatever they're passionate about. But the biggest, the simple way to put it, and the way I usually try to explain it to a lot of people, even to other kayakers, is that it's because kayaking, and I'm sure maybe you have this with running as well, but for us, kayaking is a very niche sport. Although with, especially with social media, it's starting to, gain a little bit of popularity. The hard part is, by being in a niche sport doesn't always mean that there's the most money or support. Now, in the end, I'm very fortunate to be sponsored by some big brand as well as the smaller brand within kayaking that allows me to do what I do. But in the end, when it comes to being a professional whitewater kayaker, you will always find something else to do to allow you to be a professional whitewater kayaker. So for a lot of people, and for myself and my friends that I travel with, what that usually means is that's why we do all of our own videoing, our photography, or there's a lot of whitewater kayakers that are professional photographers as well. So because the problem is that, one, it's because it's niche, you have to find ways to make it work. But the biggest thing, that a lot of the places we go, you can only access by kayaking. So it's a lot of times it's pretty hard to get, an outside videographer or photographer, because a lot of the places we go, it's so remote. So that's why, particularly for myself and a lot of my friends, what we do is we basically, wherever we go, we will create all the content. We will create all the support for our sponsors, for each other. And what that means is that when we come back from a trip, we have all this stuff that we can use to present to brands to try to get more support for the next trip and things like that. Yeah. So in the end, we're very, for myself personally, in the end, it's like, for a lot of brands, it's like, if they just can help me get to a location, I can take care of the rest, whether by myself or with the people I travel with. And what that does is that allows me to, if I'm going kayaking, I'm creating content, I'm making everything I need to, so that way when I come back, I can support my brand. And then juggling everything else, in the end, it's just stuff that I want to be doing that I know will snowball into more opportunities to kayak. Yeah. Or it's just stuff that I enjoy doing, whether like learning Illustrator or doing edits or creating short films and things like that. When it comes to basically, it's anything I do is to snowball into more kayaking. So when I'm going kayaking, I'm trying to find ways to take that trip, waterfall, whatever it is, and use it to get more support to then go kayaking again somewhere else.
That's exactly what I'm trying to do, but with big mountain runs. But the content creation, well, luckily I have Carson, who's a, professional photographer and videographer. But for me to make the content and to like piece it all together and then put it out there, it's just like there's some barrier that's so hard for me to do, and I think I just hate sitting in front of a computer.
That's totally fair. I just want to be outside going to do something fun. That's totally fair. I guess the one thing one thing I got lucky with, I guess, in another aspect, is not whether being surrounded by the right people that like doing the same thing that I do, which is basically we're just trying to go kayaking as much as possible. But growing up, when I was younger, like even 11, 12, my dad was like letting me, edit little videos on his computer. And then when I was 13, my parent bought me a computer, which is a ridiculous thing to do for a 13-year-old. But what that allowed me to do is I already had some video cameras that allowed me to film a lot more and make more edits. And then I also learned how to do Photoshop while I was on there, and that being able to start that, it's just kind of this playful thing from the beginning with the people I was with, or the things that my parents provided for me, turned into, by the time I really needed to find a way to continue being a whitewater kayaker, or how I support my brand, because I only ever want to do things as I like to do them. I try not to get buckled down into things I don't enjoy.
Yeah.
And so luckily that kind of got me excited about photos and video from an early age, whether the stuff my parents got me, and the camera gear, the computer. So by the time I needed to apply it to, bigger concepts like supporting bigger brands and things like that, I already had a lot of the base skill level, but also the passion and enjoyment to do that. And so now when I go to a trip now, I can fly drones, I can do the photos, I can do video, and the people I'm with do the same thing for me, and together we create a lot of incredible content that we then can use to help each other gain the support we need to continue doing more trips. And in the end, we all just want to go kayaking as much as possible.
Yeah, and it's so crazy when you get outdoor athletes who are trying to perform in a professional sport, and not only for us now who live in this world where content creation is an expectation when you sign a contract, but I'm just thinking about when your dad was a professional kayaker and how different that must have been. So was most of his income just from race bonuses?
So in the end, he would be able to speak on exactly what that looked like, because obviously social media is a much newer thing. But for back in those days, from the way I see it, and a lot of my understanding, is that a lot of it was very competition based. So there were probably there were more competitions back then, whether for freestyle kayaking and racing and things like that. And because there wasn't necessarily, it wasn't on ESPN or really anything like that. And there were videos coming out a couple times a year, things like that. It was pretty much the competitions were, and my dad would destroy almost every competition he would show up to. He was 4-time world champion, all of that. The events were where a lot of the support came from. If you weren't showing up to the biggest event and potentially winning or doing well there, that it would be harder to create a living, because that's how you were supporting your brand with that in-face stuff. Now these days, for better or worse, it doesn't. That kind of thing isn't as required. For each person, that can be juggled as what they're passionate about or how the sponsors want them to perform. Everyone's different, but it's a little different these days, being able to do almost all of your support simply by just posting online, which is great. And there's a lot of opportunities of that as well, because for a lot of people now, some people like competing, some people just like doing expeditions, and now with social media and being able to support brands in a different way, it allows each person to kind of find their lane that they enjoy. Whereas I imagine in those days, for a lot of people, it felt like you had to go do the competitions and try to do the best you can, which had its benefits too. But in the end, everyone these days can kind of find their own lane. And I think back then it was probably still like that, but I think it was much more competition based.
Yeah. What's your lane look like?
What's my well, the good news is that for a lot of people, they generally find one aspect, at least for whitewater kayaking, that they enjoy, whether it's racing, waterfalls, extreme kayaking, freestyle, there's a couple different aspects you can do, big whitewater, tight micro creeks, whatever it is. Everyone kind of has their own style that they enjoy or excel at and pursue that. Generally, just because of the way I grew up, but also the different people I was paddling with, I never actually really wanted to just only do one thing. So I actually do every aspect of whitewater kayaking, whether freestyle kayaking, races, waterfalls, expeditions, all that. So I try to do it all, which I think is a big part of why I've been able to get to the skill level that I'm at, because I think each one kind of helps each other out in some way. Everything can kind of come back together in some way and influence each side. But the other thing as well is that allows me to never feel burnt out or struggle to fill my year, because after I do, a month or two of freestyle kayaking, meaning the really short, small kayaks meant for doing tricks and standing features, kind of like the end of an ocean wave with that foam pile, like that whitewater. Those kind of features, we're doing flips and tricks and things like that.
And what's a standing feature?
Basically a wave or a breaking
I was
feature.
You don't pull your skirt and stand up in the kayak, right?
No, that's right. Yeah, that's fair. So there's freestyle kayaking, surfing big waves, and then there's so I whenever I do a certain amount of time in a certain aspect, I get my fill, and then I'm ready to move on to the next. After a little bit of time doing freestyle kayaking or something that's a little more relaxed, I can then feel really ready to go scare myself, whether it's on a big waterfall or a big expedition or things like that. And that allows me to never burn out throughout the year, and I make sure that I'm always exactly where I want to be. And it helps me fill the time, but also I do think it helps a lot with learning new skills and continuing to progress my kayaking. And I definitely, I think a big part of just the place I've gotten to is because I never stuck to one thing.
Yeah, that makes sense, and probably also why you're considered the best in the world, because if, I think in any sport, the best is considered a versatile athlete. In my sport, the best are the ones that can race any distance, any terrain, and rec shop.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So, yeah, something that you said just now is you like to scare yourself. And that is something that I think people don't do in their day-to-day enough, because it kind of sucks for a few seconds. Every time I imagine, even though you are excited to send it, there's maybe not, but let me know, minutes of hesitation, oh shit, I'm about to go down this massive waterfall.
Yeah, there's definitely it's not that I enjoy being scared per se. Like I always find that everybody kind of has their interesting own answer to, especially when explaining to somebody that doesn't do extreme sports why we like it. And everyone has their own answer because everyone's different. For me, it's never, I don't necessarily enjoy being scared, obviously, but the biggest thing is I think I'm scared a lot more often than people think. Even in simpler days, I'm always nervous in some way. But the biggest thing for me is that whether just being surrounded by, again, the right people and somehow I've gotten to the point where the mindset I have is like I will only ever do something if I actually want to be doing it. It doesn't matter if it's a simple little freestyle competition or the biggest waterfall I've ever done. I make sure that I'm focused on only doing it because I want to do it. It's something something about the challenge excites me, or something about the difficulty of what I'm trying to do gets me excited. That's what matters. If I'm not excited about it, I know that I'm probably not doing it for the right reasons. I usually won't do it. And so I try to make sure that I'm excited about it and think it's actually going to be fun, even if it is scary, because for a lot of reasons, whether for competitions or big waterfalls, what that does, it allows me to enjoy the entire process because I'm excited about something that's big and scary. And it makes it that much better when it goes well, but it also makes it a lot easier to digest if it doesn't go as well, because it's like I was excited about it and I did the best I could to enjoy the whole process as much as possible. Just makes it that much better when it goes great and a little easier to handle when it doesn't.
Oh my gosh, I have so much that I'm curious about here. I think first, before I forget, what's an example of a time where it didn't go well and you had to swallow? Because in whitewater, in running, I mean, granted, the type of mountain running I do, there is risk involved. It is risky, but I feel like you can be much more controlled. Like sometimes, I mean, you can always get out of your boat, scope, get back in, but once you're in, you're in. There's no bailing, which with mountain running, you can okay, this ridge line, too sketch today, the weather's not good, I'm gonna go down because it's too exposed, But when things go wrong, I imagine they go really wrong.
I mean, in the end, when it comes to any outdoor sport, there's always going to be some aspect that can be, especially extreme sport, there's always some form of risk that's involved with it, whether it's big or small. But there is definitely the aspect of, with whitewater kayaking, that you're on a natural river, and there are a lot of, you're not in control. The river is the one, you just learn how to adapt and learn how to read whitewater and things like that, learn how to understand features, kind of very similar to how surfers know to look where they're going or places to avoid. But there is definitely that aspect of there's a lot of places where you're locked in and committed, and if things were to go wrong, you need to swim out of your kayak, that would potentially be really not good. Mm-hmm. So there's always that aspect, which definitely adds to the level of, we're all just on the water, we're respecting the river as much as possible, just trying to learn and adapt as best we can. But there's a lot of natural features, and a lot of things can change, and nothing is ever the same back to back. You could run the same whitewater 30 times and it's going to behave differently every time. The same waterfall is not going to do the same thing every time. Everything changes. It's always a different variable, a different challenge each time. And so there's definitely always that intimidating factor, especially once you start to get into the really, really big whitewater or these really, really committed gorges where you won't be able to be helped if something goes wrong. Now, the biggest thing is as long as you surround yourself with the right people and as well as be smart about your decision making, what happens, and what I usually try to tell people, that a lot of the time there's a lot that goes into a big moment, especially something like a big waterfall. There's a lot, whether it's scouting the lines, scouting the dangers, making sure that we have people below the waterfall, around the waterfall, ready to help if something does go wrong. So there's a lot of that goes into a lot of this whitewater. Very rarely am I running something that's big, scary, without some form of aspect, some form of safety aspect, whether it's somebody in their kayak or on the side of the river with what's called a throw bag, which is the line they can throw to help us out. So there's a lot of that goes into those moments, but in the end, it is a natural river, and there's a lot of things going to happen, and just a lot's not in your control. So you just do the best you can with the ability you have and try to make smart decisions and surround yourself with the right people and have a good plan if things do go wrong.
Yeah. And I'm interested in an example of a time where something did go wrong and how you overcame it, because again, it's extreme.
Yeah.
It's extreme consequences.
Yeah, I've been pretty fortunate with the without having to have that many bad experiences when it comes to the river. I guess there's a lot of different reasons why that happened, but in the end, I'm fortunate with how long I've been kayaking and a lot of the things that I do, that I haven't had to deal with any really, really bad experiences. But in the end, one of the few times that I've had things go, potentially I've had like a few moments, but one of the main ones, when I was like 14 years old on an expedition in Newfoundland, I missed my line. I still wasn't that good at doing waterfalls or creeking at that time, and I messed up a line. I landed, basically there's like one aspect of one area of the waterfall that was good to go, like the water was landing in deep water, but a lot of the waterfall was landing on rocks. And I missed my line. I landed on the rocks, and what that did is it ejected me out of my boat. But instead of just coming out from below the waterfall, I ended up getting body resurfaced at the bottom of the waterfall, meaning that the feature wasn't letting me out. Mm-hmm. And I was underwater for about, I don't know, it wasn't crazy long, about a little over 40 seconds, but I had just started blacking out when luckily the feature washed me out. And that was definitely a scary experience at 14. Luckily, it didn't scare me out of it or anything. It was just a mistake that was made. But so I definitely, just something like that for a lot of people, it's hard to overcome. I think I was young enough I was old enough that it didn't scare me out of kayaking, and I already loved kayaking enough, but I wasn't old enough that it really kind of changed my aspect. It was just definitely
but it
scary
is
experience.
like, this is like one of those things where I call growth moments. 40 seconds doesn't sound long for someone who hasn't interacted with water. Holy shit, 40 seconds is a long time when you're held under. And it sounds, you speak so casually of it, but that type of fear would have scared a lot of other people. And maybe it's your exposure from a super young age, but what is it about your personality that you think makes you look at that and be like, oh, I'm just going to grow from that. I know what I did wrong, and I know how to not do it again. And it's one of those things, like, it sounds like you almost gained confidence from that because because you learned.
Yeah, I think in the end, the main, for something like that, but in that experience in particular, I think a big thing for me is, I definitely, throughout the years, I always just try to make the best decisions possible. And I think that has allowed me to not do something because there's something I don't like about it, or make the decision to not run something even if I really wanted to. And I think for that experience in particular, it was just an understanding that it was not a difficult line to hit, but I just made a simple mistake, and it just got taken by some water offline, and it does happen. And I think that I do think I was young enough that it was more like, oh, this is just something that happens. But I think the learning experience more than anything is just, it doesn't take, it just only takes a split second for things to go wrong, and making sure that even if the line seems simple, to focus on it as big of a challenge as possible, because it only, like I said, the water is always changing, things are always moving around, and a lot of whitewater has these big things that you have to focus on, but sometimes it can be the littlest thing that changes the outcome. And so that's why you have to really focus on the littlest thing, the biggest thing, and it's often the thing that you least expect going wrong that you have to adjust. So adjust and overcome for us. So I definitely think that experience more than anything was just, it was scary, but it was, I knew I was in a remote place. I was running a waterfall. I understood enough that I was like, this is the kind of risk for taking with this aspect of extreme kayaking. And in the end, I just try to make sure not to make simple mistakes.
Yeah. So it sounds like your answer, and like, as you said, you are scared a lot, and it sounds like your answer to facing that fear is preparedness. Yeah, preparedness and experience. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. What would you say to a new kayaker that is, experiencing these same anxieties, or anyone in an extreme sport or doing anything that they're afraid of, to give them the courage to face it?
I mean, I think the biggest thing is definitely for anyone in extreme sports, but just anyone that's trying to push themselves, always make sure it's for the right reasons. And remember that all of us are scared. Like, we're not immune to it. The fear is never going to go away. You just have to make sure that, because for me, if you're scared, that means you're paying attention to something, it means usually if there's something really big and challenging and you're not scared at all, that might mean you're not looking at all the variables correctly, or potentially not really approaching it from the safest angle. Whereas when you're scared, you're noticing something, and that usually will guide you to make the best decision possible. And so for a lot of people, I would say just remember that even those of us that reach the highest level we try to, does not mean that we're not scared. The fear never goes away. And so when going for things, remember that the decision to not do something is always a lot harder because it might be something you really want to do. But always make sure that it's actually something you feel ready for and excited for, and excited about the idea of what you're doing, not just what it's going to feel like when it's done.
Totally.
Yeah, it's because a lot of people, they're like, I want nothing more to be able to say I ran this waterfall or this rapid, but that can often lead to people jumping into something before they're actually ready for it because they're focused on the outcome. And I apply this to freestyle competitions as well, or races, because like I said, I make the whole thing exciting. I make the whole thing enjoyable. I love the idea of the before the competitions, before the waterfall, the actual challenge of the waterfall or something scary is what excites me. But then it allows me to enjoy it that much more when it goes well, but also handle it better when it doesn't. So that's the biggest thing, is you have to be excited about the before, the actual challenge, because if you're not and you're only focused on the end result, then there's a chance you might do something you're not actually ready for.
Yeah. Or then what's the point? That's something that in my own professional career, I came onto the scene and was really good, really fast. I mean, I ran collegiately and had other opportunities before that. And
Awesome.
But in the trail scene, I came on really fast and
Cool.
was able to sign a pro contract. And then with all this
That's awesome.
pressure, I all of a sudden was racing for the wrong reasons. And as you would expect, I got super injured. My
Right.
career wasn't as fun. I was taking unnecessary risks and getting in trouble in the mountains where I had to,
Wow.
which happens, and that's such good advice for, I think, anyone who's listening to this. And I know a lot of this audience are also climbers, and I know a lot of climbers friends of mine who've died because of that same reason. And I think something else, whether it's doing the thing just because you want to say you've done the thing, or just because you feel like you should do it to get to that next level, or not respecting it. And I think that's what, any time that an extreme athlete doesn't feel that fear or that nervousness, that should be a red flag.
Yeah.
Because then it means that something, you're probably overconfident, or something's just numb. You're I also know a lot of athletes who've gotten in trouble when they've been under this pressure for a long time, and then they just start doing stupid things just to feel something, just am I,
Right.
and that's when they get in trouble.
Yeah.
It's tricky. Does the nerves that you feel in competition cross over with that fear, or is it? I imagine it's two different types of fear, before competition, and then when you're race, or when you're just sending it over a big waterfall.
They're actually pretty similar. In the end, it's all just nerves and whether nervousness, fear, whatever it is. In the end, they both, I would say, are a similar feeling. There's obviously the aspect that, going over a big waterfall has extreme risks, whereas the competition, the worst thing that could happen is you don't win or you don't make it through the round. So there's certainly a different level of mentally, the difference in the outcome is one is just a bad result, the other is potential injury or worse. So there's a subconscious difference there. But I think growing up, I primarily did freestyle kayaking, competitions, the tricks and things like that. 'Cause that's one of the main aspects that my dad was doing as well, and we were constantly going to these competitions. So I did a lot of freestyle kayaking growing up.
And that's scored by points.
Yeah.
So you have a certain window where you get to perform, and then you either perform great through that. Is that condition dependent at all?
A little bit. I mean, the conditions obviously change. So basically, time trial racing, that's super easy to understand. Point A to point B, fastest time win. Some races do have gates and things like that. Head to head, easy to understand. 4 people racing against each other, first one at the bottom win. Again, easy to understand. But for freestyle kayaking, what it is a standing feature. It's one feature Basically, you have 3 judges that are watching you about 45 seconds or a minute, depending on the competition. And those 3 judges have a sheet of tricks, and they're looking for the tricks to be executed in a certain way. And it's up to them whether or not to give you a trick. And obviously, the harder the trick, the more the point. And then the high and low scores are dropped. That means the middle judge, or they average out the score. And it's your job to learn the tricks as best as possible, and sell them as best as possible, and try to learn based on the feature, because one routine, the trick you're going to do in one feature might be a lot different than the next feature you go to. So you have to adjust to each competition. You're probably going to have a different routine, and a lot of places, it's just up to you to either you can go for a more like routine where you're doing a lot of middle ground tricks, not the hardest ones, but a lot of them, and for a lot of people, they like to do is try to do as many of the hardest tricks as possible for as many points as possible. But there's a chance that you might not get those points, or potentially flush out of the feature.
Yeah.
So it's very different each competition you go to, and there are competitions around the U.S. and the world that these events take place. And then every 2 years there's the World Championships for it, which happens in a different place every time. And that just finished taking place in Columbus, Georgia, at the end of last year, which I ended up winning, which was my 5th World Championship, which was super exciting because my dad was 4-time world champion, which was the most, and this was my opportunity to overtake him on that. So that was exciting, which it was just exciting to take another title, but that was also a fun aspect of it. But yeah, so freestyle kayaking, I grew up doing a lot, and being exposed to competitions that much, I got used to competing. But more importantly, my dad focused really hard on making everything competitive, whether on water, off water, but make it still fun. And then my mom was really good at, if things didn't go well, just being like, it's just kayaking, it's just a competition, don't freak out, everybody's gonna go home, nobody's gonna, everything's gonna be fine. So I think having that balance allowed me to grow up with a really healthy competition mindset. And having that exposure that young allowed me to start having good results early enough on that I just got very used to competing for so long.
That's so incredible that your parents were able to foster that sense. And that's an area where a lot of parents fail with gifted athletes, is that they put so much pressure on the competition. And I read this interesting study not too long ago that most athletes who succeed later in life in their sport were actually pretty average in the younger teenage years, because they got the opportunity to explore other things, but also explore other things, so that when they chose the sport where they excelled in, you knew it was a choice. And that's my own theory, but not being so specialized, I think, takes the pressure off, and when you're not that good, when you're in those super formative years, it takes the pressure off and allows you to succeed later. For the right reasons. But it sounds like you had a lot of pressure on you as a kid, even if you didn't feel it or didn't realize it, and you were, with the help of your family, able to cope with that.
Yeah, I mean, in the end, my dad was already such a big name in kayaking growing up, and he was the world's best kayaker. He was winning events, world championships, races, all this stuff. He was also a kayak designer, so he was making working for the brands that he was working for, making them the biggest whitewater brand, and then starting his own company, Jackson Kayak. One of the biggest things is I definitely never felt pressure, and I don't think anybody that I was ever with. The nice thing about kayaking, for better or worse, like I said, it's a niche sport. It can be kind of tough to make a living out of. You have to really work hard to make a living out of it, and I've been fortunate enough to be able to do that for a number of reasons, but I have a lot of friends that are able to support themselves as well, which on one side, because of that amount of work, that whoever's putting in that effort actually just enjoys kayaking. And a big thing for me is that I think the community of kayaking is very much like we all just like kayaking. It's very rare that you have someone that's just I really don't enjoy it, but I'm going to do it anyways, or I just want to win this one event or whatever. It's rare that you actually end up with someone that doesn't actually do it for the love, and I think that is a big part of and because there isn't this, millions of dollars of fame and everything at the end of even when you're at the peak, I think that kind of calms everyone down in a lot of ways, and it allows everyone just to enjoy being around each other, and nobody's ever dude, you're not doing enough. Like, there's no outside pressure, whether from my family or the other people we were surrounded with.
Yeah.
And I think more than anything, I'm looking back, I imagine that for a lot of people, they were just excited to see, because I started kayaking super young, and I started doing a lot of hard whitewater even when I was like 11 years old. I think more than anything, I think people are just excited to see me kayak, and my dad was excited that I love to go kayaking with him everywhere. So, and in the end, it was always about just enjoying it and having fun, and I think just having that upbringing, I never felt any pressure, and I don't think anyone else ever, and I don't think that because I was like shielded. I think it was more.
It sounds like because you were exposed.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
it sounds like you didn't feel that pressure because you were immersed in it, and you were always like, do it because it's fun, and compete well because it's good to do your best. And then your mom was like, but it doesn't really matter at the end of the day.
Yeah, she's always been good with that. But another thing that definitely helped a lot was kids in kayaking was like a lot of people back in the day would start kayaking pretty young. But the hardest part about kids in kayaking was that there weren't ever any kayaks that were made for kids. Mm-hmm. And my dad was at a brand at the time that he wanted to make kids kayaks right when my sister and I were getting much more fired up to get into kayaking. But the brand said that there's no reason to do it, no money in kids kayaks or anything like that. So when my dad left that brand, he started the family business, Jackson Kayak. The first kayak he made was a kid's kayak for myself and my sister, and that and he sold, like, that became a big thing. Like, now there's so many of the world's best kayakers now that started in our kids kayaks, and it would definitely been a lot different for me through those main years of trying to get better at kayaking. I didn't have the right equipment to help me with that. And even these days, there's still people, whether they're passing down from one kid to the next, their kid's boat, or, there's kids that are learning how to roll when they're 5 years old now because they have a kayak that fits them.
I was just going to say that because when we first started this podcast, you were like, yeah, I got in a kayak the first time when I was 2. And then you started talking about running rivers when you're around, like, I forget, like 4 or 5. And I was thinking, like, how in the hell did he roll a full-size kayak? Yeah. I can hardly do that.
So that was a big part of why I was able to get a lot of the skills and go do a lot of the kayaking that I and I had a fiberglass, like, 0.8 smaller kayak when I was really young.
So real quick, can you explain to the listeners how to roll a kayak, like just what it is?
So basically one of the first skills you're going to learn, besides sitting in the kayak in the water, is learning how to roll the kayak. If you do flip over, our kayaks, obviously, they have you're sitting in them, you have support on your hips, you're not strapped into the kayak, but you have good support on your feet and your hips, so that makes sure you're not super loose in the kayak. And we have what's called a skirt, which goes on the cockpit of the kayak, which keeps the water out. So when you flip over, you're not just, sinking.
Yeah.
So we have those on, and then the rolling the kayak is if we do flip over, we roll the kayak back up, and that's the first skill you obviously want to learn, because when you're in whitewater, you're flipping unintentionally a lot.
Yeah, totally.
So that's the first thing that you learn, and that's the main skill that people focus on first, and then you just continue to get better at that to the point where flipping over isn't this crazy thing. It's like, learning how to pop up on a surfboard. That's the first thing you're going to learn.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of things.
It takes kind of a lot of torque, just for listeners, to roll a kayak, so it's hard. You have to be very strong, which is why it's so why it was so surprising to hear of a kid that young rolling a full-size kayak.
Yeah, I mean, in the end, it's more than anything, it's technique more than it is strength, because, I mean, in the end, there are people that can, have their arms on their chest rolling a kayak, and there are people that, you can roll up with one hand instead of with the paddle. It's just certain little techniques that just make it easier to do, and just skills that you learn over the years.
When I learned to roll a kayak, they made us go like this.
Oh, really?
And, when we rolled it,
Okay.
Until we passed, because we were, I mean, it was part of my training, because I used to be a canoe guide before this, and then this is when I actually learned it, and then I was a raft guide. But for my canoe guide, they made us cross our arms to do it, which it took me days to do it. It was so hard.
That's I don't even think I can roll properly with my arms on my chest, but I can roll without a paddle. But no, that's cool. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was really hard. So I want to get back to when you were a kid, when it seems like so much happened and you really fell in love with it and living in an RV. Were you homeschooled first?
I was homeschooled.
Yeah.
I didn't. both my sister and I were homeschooled. I never actually went to public school. Like I said, we moved into the RV when I was 4 years old. So my mom was my teacher, and my dad would help out as well. I was homeschooled. My sister graduated like 2 years early, but I actually ended up dropping out in 10th grade. Just never graduated high school because I wasn't bad at school. But the problem is that when we're living in an RV, we're often just parked right next to a river, and it's kind of hard to be sitting there doing schoolwork and looking outside, and you could either be playing in the river, whether kayaking or most of my childhood was playing with little miniature kayaks and little creeks, things like that. So I just wanted to be outside.
Yeah.
So it wasn't necessarily I was bad at school, but I fell about a year behind, and then eventually it was right when I started to get a little more recognition outside of the fact that it was just my dad's kid. I was like starting to make a name for myself, what people like to say.
Yeah.
But I had just won my first freestyle world championship for the under 18 category. Got 3 gold medals there, and I was had also won a big event, like an invitational only with the world's best kayakers that spring in Canada. So I was just I was in 10th grade, and I think it was actually, if I remember correctly, I'm pretty sure it was like almost like my mom's idea. She was like, you don't have to finish. I could be mistaken on that. I don't remember very well now, but I know that I had their support, and I just kind of stopped in 10th grade because I was like, I would just much rather be kayaking. And clearly that worked out till now.
And it's a thing, like if you're homeschooled, you can always go back and
Yeah.
do it. You
Yeah,
know, if you wanted to get your
100%.
GED
Yeah.
today,
Yeah.
you could
Yeah.
pretty easily.
Yeah, but the good news is that there's a lot of things that I just would much rather go kayaking, make videos and have sponsors and work for sponsors and things like that. And if there's ever a necessity for me to get something like my GED, I'll obviously get it. But for now, everything
no
that I need to, kayaking's going great, and anything that I want to learn that could help me support myself to continue kayaking as much as possible, support myself and my fiance to travel the world and go do what we do. I will learn that, whether like I said, like I can do the photos, I can do the videos. I'm trying to learn Illustrator to get better at like making designs for T-shirts and things like that. And if at any point there's something I need to learn, I will learn it. But I'm making sure that any of the work I'm doing is stuff that I'm enjoying and excited to do.
Totally, and it's so cool because it's this avenue that, and I came from, before I signed my pro contract, I was a teacher,
Cool.
and I, within that system, felt so disheartened by it because I saw so many kids just like, you're a brilliant kid, but you're not supported in the system. And you're proving it by, having this career in professional kayaking, but really your career is so well-rounded, and with the internet now, we can really learn anything and become experts in anything that we choose. And for people, I think like you and me, I really just did not do school the way I should have. I was good at testing, but didn't do any homework ever. Literally did nothing.
Well, you get the end result, so that's good.
Yeah. But, and it's cool because I think like this day and age really suits people like you and I, because we can learn anything, but we don't have to learn stuff that we're not interesed in, you know, and if we need it, we can learn at an as-need basis, but we don't need to go through the steps. Like I just like flailed through the school system. I actually ended up like dropping out of college for a long time, and like I ended up like piecing together an online degree so I could teach, but
cool.
it was not easy.
Right. Yeah. It took work. No, for sure.
Yeah.
No, there's nothing. I mean, in the end, like these days, like there's everybody has their own pursuits and ways that high school and college can benefit, but for some people that's just not the avenue that works. Like, so it's just, everyone's different, obviously, but I think I don't think that I would have gained much more by finishing high school. I think I've learned a lot of other skills that simply just by being able to, that time that I might have been doing finishing high school was spent learning how to do photography and videography just by going out and filming kayaking. So, but there's, in the end, it's everyone's different, but these days it's just very nice that there's any skill that, like one specific skill you want to learn, you can probably find it online and then apply it immediately to whatever you're working on, rather than, I think for me, I struggle to retain a lot of information that if it doesn't directly apply to something I'm working on in that moment.
If you don't care about it, it's just gonna I could read the same page 50 times and not retain the information if I don't care about the subject. But like I read constantly. I love books.
Yeah. It's like learning 6 months of Spanish and then never having an opportunity to speak it, and then 2 years later, like, I
You're like,
don't
oh yeah,
remember.
I guess I learned Spanish.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, in the end, it's everything. Everyone's different. Everyone has their own thing. But yeah, it's definitely where we have it not easier. We have it very useful tool, which is anything we want to learn, we can look up. And I think for me, that's super nice. Anything I want to learn about photos, video, editing, After Effects, Illustrator, Photoshop, any new skill I want to learn, I can apply pretty much directly when I have that problem arise.
Yeah. That's something I wish I was more interested in. Thank God for Carson.
Yeah, I mean, in the end, it is time consuming though. So I mean, there's no point on the editing. Is there's a lot of people don't do any of the photos or the video stuff. They'll sometimes hold a video camera, but then a lot of people don't do the editing. But it is a lot of work for sure. I mean, it doesn't necessarily feel like work, which is very cliche to say, but like I'm excited to do it. I'm excited to shoot my own stuff, all my own drone filming, photos, videos, shooting with my friends and things like that, but then learning how to apply it in new ways. And a lot of the videos I usually just from a trip, I try to have like one big edit from the year or things, but a lot of my, like especially on my YouTube and stuff, it's a little more vlog style right now, mainly just for like GoPros and stuff. But my other friends that with our company send, they do like one of them doing a lot more like really creative YouTube stuff, and he's getting really, really good. And he's always been good, but he's getting way, way better. And it's just fun to have these people that you can travel with, knowing that we can film each other, support each other, and then use that. And it's not like when we film each other, it's like, no, you can't use that content for your brand. It's like anything we shoot together, we let everyone have free range to help get the support they need so that way we all can go kayaking as much as we can.
That's so supportive and amazing. I love that. When you say vlog, just out of curiosity, is it just like you like talking about your day and what it's going to look like to go run this river, like why you're taking certain lines? And that's cool because you're educating people.
Yeah. And that's, when I say vlog, it's not the LA style vlog, like here's
class.
A giant inflatable pool, but not that there's teach your own, there's nothing wrong with that, but I feel like when I say vlog, that's probably what people have in mind. But essentially I do like making longer form, bigger edits with like normal cameras, drones and all that, but in like 2019, I started doing more just GoPro style videos where I'm like a lot of talking to the camera and stuff. But it's like you said, like more because a lot of the times when you see edits and you see these films, you either don't get the full information or you are curious how this was pulled off or how they even got to this certain area, especially when it comes to those montage edits. So what I tried to start doing was I tried to kayak as much as possible. And the biggest thing, the main reason I started as well is that, for Instagram, I only ever want to post like the best clips I have. And what I realized with YouTube, what I could do is even on the simplest, smallest days, I could still get content out there which people, I guess, like to watch. But on top of that, what it allowed me to do, because there's one thing that with our sport, there's a lot of things that people just don't know about it, whether you're a kayaker or not a kayaker. So what I've tried to do is when I go kayaking, I try to give as much information as possible, like, I'm going to this river, and then I usually try to show the hiking, or I show the lake paddle in or out, and then I show the scouting or the talking through why I'm running a rapid or why I'm not, or the variables or the challenge or where the safety is. Basically, to try to give as much information as possible to show like what goes into even just a simple day of kayaking for those that want to see it, but also by talking through lines or talking through how to set safety or how to help things go wrong, the stuff that we're actually applying day to day, I think that's educational for kayakers and non-kayakers, because the more people understand all that, it's just useful information.
Yeah.
So I try to, and a lot of the videos too, I try to show as much of the whitewater as possible. So that way, if someone's going to go do a river for their first time, they kind of have an idea of what to expect by watching my video, or they'll know some of the lines or help them with some of the lines. So it's I'm glad I started doing that. And I only started doing that because my friends were kind of doing something similar. And I was like, yeah, but YouTube, I was like, you don't really get views really and stuff like that. But then when I realized I could apply and show a lot more of the kayaking, I was like, okay, that's something I'm excited about doing. And it's gone well. And in the end, I just like being able to give all that information, and it makes it to that way every day on the water. I can still be productive. Like going kayaking directly relates to, even on the simplest river, the easiest day on the water, it doesn't have to be the most badass thing. I can still get content out there that people seem to like to watch.
And that's so cool. There's this hot topic right now in extreme sports, and maybe you've been in this conversation a little bit, of whether it's the responsibility falls on the shoulders of the elite athletes who are public on the internet to educate people who are trying to get into sports. Again, running is not always as consequential, but like climbing is a big one, or and mountain running can be, like someone can go 100%. For the Mount Hood FKT, or fastest known time, and not know what they're doing and just do it because they saw a short Instagram clip about it. And, it's a question that I get all the time is that, like, is it my responsibility to educate people about mountain safety? And like, just like I'm sure you feel, promoting all this awesome this awesome sport and all this content, like, do you feel a responsibility to educate like people who might just be getting into it?
I wouldn't say responsibility. I don't think that I feel the pressure that it's on me to make sure that, like, it's if they don't hear it from me, that they'll never know. Like,
totally.
Whether it's things that you just notice on your own, or you learn through other kayakers, or looking online, whatever it is, everybody, takes the information in differently, or can notice information. But I wouldn't say I ever feel pressure. But what I definitely don't feel pressure. But what I like is that all I ever really want to do is, because a lot of the stuff I do, and whether it's for kayakers or non-kayakers, but a lot of it can be like, oh, you're just being, adrenaline junkie, reckless. And I'm like, there's actually, like I mentioned earlier, there's a lot that goes into something like a big waterfall, whether safety-wise or the internal discussion, whether with yourself, whether or not you feel ready or excited about it. But the biggest thing as well is the more information I can provide through these videos naturally, not like sit through 20 minutes of me explaining every little thing. It's more like a natural way, and something that actually applies to the day that I'm doing. Something as simple as I'm putting this person here for safety because of this reason, that might help someone down the line. They'll be like, oh, I saw that this is how Dane likes to set safety in this situation. That might help them stay safe.
Literally, that might save lives, which is pretty amazing.
So it's like, so I think, and rather than feeling pressure or responsibility, it's more like if any information that I can provide that can help someone know what to expect in the river, meaning that, whether it's like where they're portaging around, or where the dangerous rapids are, or simply where to set safety, or even just a breakdown of how I'm doing a line or running a waterfall, or how I read the whitewater, any information that that can help anyone that can use that information and apply it to their own kayaking. It's great, because whether it's the safety or just learning how to be a better paddler, and the better the people get, the safer they're going to be on the water, as safe as we can be anyway. So I think I like putting that information out there in a easy to digest way, because that helps someone be safer on the water, be smoother, and be better. That's great, because that's just a great opportunity to just. I, as someone that likes to take in information as something that can help me be better, I love the idea that some people like to see that out of my videos. Yeah,
that's so cool. And something that I'm sure is a consequence of your videos is the growth of the sport of whitewater kayaking. In a lot of sports, like pretty much every outdoor sport, there's almost a air of gatekeeping to protect spots. How do you balance that with, I'm sure the growth of whitewater kayaking is good for a lot of reasons. And it means more money in the sport, more opportunity for athletes, bigger community, brands sinking more money into it. But it also comes at okay, there's going to be more people traversing over this terrain, or more people running a river. Does that matter to you at all?
No, I wouldn't say that is an aspect of kayaking that I know that is an aspect in certain sport for very valid reasons in a lot of ways. Like, it's not each sport has their things that they are trying to be careful about how much information is spread. But I would say that kayaking doesn't really have that, and big part of it could be because we're still a little smaller. But in the end, everything that we're doing, a lot of the time, the local communities, like something as simple as access to the top of a river or below it. There's a lot of the communities make sure that everyone, if they're going to, a lot of the time when you're going somewhere new, you're probably going with somebody that's a local, meaning that they're going to show you down the river, whether it's just knowing, not to park in this person's house at the foot end of a river at a bridge or things like that. So I would say there isn't any gatekeeping, but we definitely, as a community, just try to respect the area as much as possible. And a lot of the places we go, it can be kayaking under a bridge at a freestyle spot or a section of river that has public access, top, bottom. In the end, the only thing that we try to be careful on and try to be as honest with other kayakers, especially newer kayakers, is what you're actually ready for. Because the biggest mistake, the biggest thing that can happen, especially now with how easy it is just to put content out, is a lot of people, the hard part is people running things that they're not quite ready for, because the tricky part about with bouldering or certain aspects of climbing, and if I'm mistaken in saying this, I apologize, but in my head, because I've done some climbing and stuff, if you're bouldering, if you're not good enough, you're not going to send that route. You're going to fall onto the pad and you're not going to be able to do it. Whereas the problem with I shouldn't say problem, but one of the aspects of kayaking is that a lot of the whitewater, or especially things like waterfalls, you're going to get to the bottom. Like let's get stuck on a rock or something. But the river is flowing. You can, and someone that just got in a kayak for the first time technically could just fall off a waterfall. Maybe they'll get lucky, but But the thing is that's the one aspect, is that a lot of people are running whitewater that they're not quite ready for, because one, they just want to be able to say that they ran the whitewater. We've all been there. We want to push ourselves, but the problem is that some people are not having as very good of lines, not being quite as safe, but because they're getting to the bottom, it's a success. Whereas it's like, well, you got to the bottom, but there's a lot of sketchy moments in there.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big part in the community. And the good news is that's not really like this thing that we're like, oh, God, I just hate everything about this. It's more just like we want everyone to be as safe as possible. Yeah. And the good news is with the community is a lot of the time, like I've had to tell people that have asked to come kayaking with me on a certain river, no, just simply because they're not quite ready for it. Like you can always come back another day. The biggest problem is when people get on stuff they're not ready for and potentially get in really dangerous situations or worse. And the other aspect as well, when it comes to extreme kayaking, that a lot of people, I don't think some people don't always approach, is that just because you're making the choice to run something doesn't mean you're not putting your friends into a potentially a not fun situation or potentially a dangerous situation, trying to help you if it does go wrong. And I try to always focus on that, especially when I'm doing something that's progressive or big for me or something. I always ask the people I'm with, like, are you okay if I do this?
Yeah.
Because the thing you got to remember is, like, if you get hurt and you're in the middle of nowhere, your friends have to deal with you. Like we've had to, I've had friends that have had to pull another friend up a 200-foot cliff, like things like that. Yeah. So it's that aspect, I think, is the most important thing as we continue to have more people getting into it, but also with being able to just throw it on Instagram. Like, I feel like some people probably run things that they're not ready for, because it's like, here, I got to run this waterfall, and everyone's like, oh, that's so sick. But it's like, yeah, but were you actually ready for it?
I'm so glad that you're creating this content on YouTube. I just remembered something crazy. When my sister was a freshman in college at U of O, she and I'm sure this guy's fine, I'm sure he's learned, but he took her whitewater kayaking on like a date. And I don't know if he even, I don't know the details. I don't know if he knew what he was doing, but he put my sister in the kayak, put the skirt on, didn't even teach her how to roll or pull her skirt. Wow. So she got in major trouble and almost drowned, and called me after crying, and it's so, and this is when I was just getting into river sports, and I was like, oh my God, you're like, let me go kill this guy.
I can imagine.
And but it's, I think even now the sport has grown, it sounds like, to a point where there's like, I don't think, this was 10 years ago maybe, and I don't think content like that existed, and it's so cool that you are, even though you don't feel that responsibility, that you are thinking about it and thinking about, like, okay, someome's going to see me send this waterfall. Like, let's make sure at least that someone sees like why I'm doing it and why I feel comfortable doing it, and here's the safety in place.
Yeah, no, I mean, any information is useful information when it comes to like how to set safety and things like that. I mean, in the end, like I said, everyone that kayaks just wants to do it, and we never want to see anybody get in trouble or get hurt, and that's why it does suck having to tell someone no at the top of a river. We don't want you to paddle with us. It might not even mean that they don't end up, they maybe they find a different group, but in the end, if someone's not ready for something, they could potentially end up in a bad position. But on top of that, you also have to be responsible at helping them. And I think that's always, sometimes can be an aspect that I sometimes wonder if everyone is thinking that way. Like I think it's very easy to think of it as an individual decision because you're making your own decision to run something, and you're the one putting yourself at risk, essentially. But what people got to remember is that your friends are the ones that are going to have to go through the scary situation if you get in trouble, get hurt, or worse. So it's always important that you're surrounding yourself with people that you trust their decision making and they trust yours. And that's why whenever I'm doing stuff, I always try to ask the people I'm with, like if they're comfortable with something that is potentially big or something that hasn't been done or something like that, because in the end, I'm aware that if something were to go wrong, they're the ones that have to deal with it. And there's that support for each other. And it's it's rare that it's not that feeling everywhere all the time. Like there's very rare circumstances where people are, kayaking is just a strong community in the end, and people are always going to try to help each other out, try to keep each other safe, and it's just important though that we hold each other accountable when you do something dumb, or you just remind yourself that your friends are the ones that have to help you if things go wrong, and use that as part of the decision whether or not to push yourself. Because if you're out in the middle of nowhere in a tight random gorge, something as simple as running something that's just big and sketchy, you're stuck in the middle of nowhere. Like a lot of people, if they get hurt, they get heli down, things like that. So there's just a lot that has to happen if you run something and get hurt in a place that's not ideal. And that's going to be a risk no matter what. Even if we're all being as safe as possible, there's always going to be risk. But it's just really important to keep in mind that even though you're the one putting yourself at risk, your friends are still very much involved if things go wrong. They're the one that have to deal with everything.
Yeah, that's so wise. Have you ever run Gore?
Gore Canyon?
Yeah.
I haven't got a chance to run Gore. I don't know why. When I go to Colorado, I grew up going to Colorado for like a month every year. Because there's the month of June pretty much had the competition every weekend, or like end of May, start of June. But these days, that time frame, I'm not going to the competition as much. I'm usually traveling elsewhere these days, but I always make sure to go to GoPro games. But so I don't have that much time in Colorado these days. But it's just at this point dumb that I haven't run it. It looks like a lot of fun.
Yeah. That's like one really famous one. Carson's run it. I run it. Obviously not in a kayak for me. Carson was in a raft too, even though he's a good whitewater kayaker. But I just thought I'd ask because that's one that I know. I guided on the Upper Colorado, so like right there, right below Gore. So something else that I found interesting when we were talking off mic. Sorry to pivot, but
you're good.
You talked about having a season and an off season. Your season's about to start. So first, like, what's the season about to start? Big River season or Big Rapid season?
Well, so I say season because for a lot of people there's off season, on season, but in the end I realistically just am never stopping. Always at like this is like we're in Hawaii right now. There's still like I would be kayaking, but there's just not water in the rivers right now. But the nice thing is when you're in Hawaii and there's no water, you're still in Hawaii, which is great. But pretty much in the end, there's almost zero downtime, and the downtime usually can still involve kayaking, whether I'm back at my family's ranch in Tennessee or something like that. But realistically, the simple way to put it is basically the winter time, like basically November through February. A lot of people end up going like try to escape the cold and go somewhere warm, whether that's Africa, or you can go to Chile, Ecuador, things like that. Generally the time of year that a lot of people will travel internationally. And then as we get into the spring, you can either go Eastern Canada for big whitewater, big waves. You can go to Northern California and go to the PNW, things like that. Like a lot of people live in Mount Hood on the other side in White Salmon. A lot of kayakers live there because it's just most world-class kayaking, but you can also do a lot of other sports. And then as you get into the summer, you start to think more of places like you can go to, there's a bunch of epic kayaking in California. in the summer, you can also go places like Norway, you can go to Iceland, places like that. And then as you get into the fall, you can kind of figure out if you want to stay. You can still do stuff in California. You can, some rains usually are coming to the southeast by the time you get into later fall. North Carolina, places like that, epic kayaking. And you can kayak pretty much year round in the southeast, which is super great. And then it just, everyone kind of has their own year. And each year looks a little different depending on the type of projects you want to do, the trips you want to do. And so for me, that it's just depends on the goals I have that year or the competitions I want to do and things like that. And every year is a little different. But that's kind of how my year would look like. So basically, over the winter, find somewhere warm, and then February through November, pretty much in my RV, traveling all over the U.S. and Canada. And then...
do you have a plan already like in place for the year, or do you just go based on like the water levels?
A bit of both, because... yeah, definitely a bit of both, because I struggle to plan really far ahead because it can depend on what things are feeling, like what the my friends' plans are, what we think we want to do. Like, I rarely can plan more than like a month in advance, because which is great, but also can be hard sometimes. But it all just kind of comes down to water levels, how the season is looking like, whether there's enough snow in certain places, or just the whether or not we want to go somewhere new or somewhere we've been. So it's always a topic of discussion, and I try to map out the year in a little bit, but in the end, it's very much like I rarely know where I'm going a month in advance, except for the few like places that I know I'm going to be at a certain point in the year, like the races in the southeast, like in North Carolina, or the end of October, start of November, so I know I'll be there. Or the start of June, I'll be at GoPro Mountain Games in Vail, Colorado. But besides that, it's rare to for me to know what we're doing a month in advance. But been trying to plan a little more in advance now with my fiance, but still, it's very water level based.
Yeah. And do you train, or do you just paddle all the time?
I just paddle. I think I could go to the gym. My friends love going to the gym. My dad loves going to the gym, and he probably wishes I would go with him more. But I don't really enjoy the gym. But I think the thing is that I am able to. I just go kayaking, and the biggest thing is I just try to kayak as much as possible. And I just feel like I do think there are definitely aspects that I could like certain get stronger in the gym and things like that. And there's a lot of benefit to it, but in the end, at least up until this point, and hopefully much longer down the line, just going kayaking has allowed me to, because when I'm kayaking, I'm still using the muscles I need, but also it's kayaking, so it's fun.
Yeah. And
anytime I'm kayaking, that's going to benefit the next time I'm kayaking. So in the end, I don't like going to the gym, but there are a lot of benefits to it for sure. But I pretty much just go kayaking as much as possible. That's my gym.
That's so amazing. Do you have to be regimented in like your sleep or your food or anything? I mean, I'm guessing no. Yeah.
No, I'm very much not a person that pays attention to that stuff. Now, the good news is that my fiance is an amazing chef, so she makes just epic meals, and I didn't even realize until like 2 years in, maybe a year and a half in, but she was always paying attention to the type of meals, or the making sure that we're getting the right vegetables, or like that she cooked me certain things the night before a race. I'm like, I know I'm just eating the best meals ever, but then I didn't realize that she was paying attention to that stuff. So I'm sure that
what's like a pre-race meal for kayakers?
I mean, I've never paid attention to that. You have to ask my fiance about that, but I usually, my biggest thing is I like to call them just like I don't really even have a term for it, but pretty much just like I love like, just like power meals, like a big bowl of rice with epic sauce and, like chicken or something like that. But I'm not paying attention to that, but apparently she does. But like a lot of people do focus on what they're eating and how they do that. And I could definitely be, maybe there's certain things that I could focus on more, but the biggest thing for me is, and I get it from my dad for sure, like a lot of people are like, oh, you must really pay attention to what you eat and stuff like that. My dad never had, like we love McDonald's, and people always like, why do you go to fast food? You're an athlete. And his goal for a long time would always to make sure he had McDonald's right before like one of the biggest events or things like that. And he even named a freestyle kayaking move called the McNasty after McDonald's. So it's in the end, I definitely don't pay attention to that, and there are certain things that I could adjust, but in the end, I know that I'm eating good because the way my fiance cooks for me, and then seems to be working for us right now. So I don't have any other reason to think otherwise.
Honestly, that's the way to do it.
Yeah.
Don't if you don't have to.
Yeah. And there's a lot of kayakers that do focus on that, and there's nothing wrong with that. To each their own.
Yeah.
The biggest thing for me is I try to only do things out of necessity if there's something that, and I'm definitely someone that tries to focus on if something does not seem like it's working or there's something that needs to adjust, I do the best I can to
What's an
apply
example of that?
That's a good question. I guess I'm just kind of mean in general.
Yeah. You're like, everything works. I'm
Yeah.
the best.
I'm just like, it's always funny when we get into to these little parts of discussion, because I think a lot of people would expect that I'm like the most like, anal person, like I have to eat this, and this. And I'm sure there are benefits in a lot of ways that maybe I would feel a slight difference, but in the end, I eat good with my fiance, and I always
Honestly,
feel energized, and
she has it covered.
Yeah, she's got it covered.
Let the expert work.
I know there's a lot more stuff that's probably covered that she hasn't even told me. But even before that, though, I mean, I just try to eat. Try to have a breakfast. Kayakers don't really eat lunch because we're always on the water, but so it's rare to have that opportunity. And then I just love, just rice, chicken, big meals or whatever. But I definitely, for in the grand scheme of things, don't focus on that stuff. But I guess my fiance does. So so I got that going for me. But even before then, I would I'd eat with my friends, and I tried like one or two times. My friend's a vegetarian, and I've done the we're gonna go to the gym every day, and I'm gonna we did like one trip in to the Zambezi River below Victoria Falls, and we did a month-long trip where we were making sure that we were only eating we went a little hardcore, but we were working out every day. We were not having breakfast. We were eating 2 hard-boiled eggs for lunch and then a big dinner. We were focusing on the calories, and we were focusing on all that. And I did that for a while, but I tried that once with him, and even he didn't want to do that again. But I didn't feel better on the water, even though I was going to the gym every day. I didn't feel stronger.
I bet you weren't actually getting enough calories.
Yeah, and that was the other thing, though, is that he just really wanted to get shredded, which we did, but it wasn't worth it.
Yeah.
But even the times that I do go to the gym a lot, I do enjoy the feeling of after a week or two in the gym, I actually can do dips with heavier weight or bigger pull-ups and things like that. And the biggest thing, if I ever would go to the gym, and my dad does this a lot as well, he goes in the gym pretty much every day, but I just try to focus on shoulder stuff, because shoulders are one of the biggest kayaking injuries. But anyways, I was going with that is that I tried that, and probably not as long as maybe to see massive benefit, but I've tried a few things like that, and I never felt better on the water. I never felt stronger. I never felt, it just felt like I'd rather be, and sometimes I just felt more tired because I'd already,
and you weren't eating enough. If you're not eating enough.
That was the only time we did the calorie deficit one. Other times, that was one time and done. We learned our mistake there. But even when I'm eating normal and going to the gym every other day or whatever, I felt stronger in the gym. I didn't necessarily feel better on the water, and if anything, I would feel more tired. So I was just I'd rather feel 100% on the water, and if there is a time that I do need to spend a little more time in the gym, maybe the rivers haven't been running, I have a little bit of downtime, and I need to make sure my shoulders don't get super tight or something like that. I'll go to the gym, but I haven't had an overwhelming necessity to go in personally the way I feel. That does not mean that there's not benefits and things that I could gain, but for me, it's just if it doesn't feel like a necessity right now, I just would rather be doing something else.
And
my
when
time.
you're living on the road, it's so hard to consistently, we did I've done living out of my car as a, high level athlete. Then I did upgraded to a van to try and make it easier. And the reality is it's just hard to be a nomad and to train. Yeah. And, it's easier when you're going out to paddle and you're doing just adventures, but man, running a lot, it's not as easy on the body, I don't think.
I can imagine. No, it's definitely, I can only imagine for so many different reasons. But it's definitely, everything has its benefits in both sides. And I know for a lot of people, they're probably shocked whenever they know I don't focus on that stuff. But a lot of people probably think I'm in the gym every day. But in the end, for me, if I'm kayaking, I know I'm using the muscles I use when kayaking, and I'd rather continue to try to get better at kayaking. Yeah. Now, that's obviously a big part of this, and to be very clear, that does come from the fact that I'm fortunate enough to be able to go kayaking a lot. And if there is if at any point I'm somewhere that it's not the right spot to be anymore, I can pack up and move on to the next. So that's definitely a big aspect of probably why I don't feel the desire or need to go to the gym or something like that as much, because I'm fortunate enough to be able to just travel around and kayak basically year round. So there's always going to be that aspect that I try to like that's definitely got to be a part of it. And I know that I just spent like a month at home, and normally in Tennessee, like over the holidays, we'd have a ton of water, kayak all the time. But there was no water while we were home, which was really surprising. And I could have been going to the gym every day, but I just wanted to enjoy the downtime over the holidays. Yeah. But I think if I were, to do that again, all of February or something, or March, if there's no water in the rivers, I'll probably need to go to the
crazy also.
And so I would probably go to the gym or do something like that more. Yeah. And I did have one. Over COVID, I was fortunate enough to, my family's ranch, we have 20 acres, and I was fortunate enough for that, for 5 months, we didn't see anybody else. We just quarantined just and my sister and her husband and their kids have a house on the property as well. So, and my grandma lives on our property as well. So I was fortunate enough to have a really good spot to quarantine for those 5 months. And so we were, we have a disc golf course on our property. So we play disc golf every day. We run the course as fast as possible. We have the gym. We can go play outside and go kayaking a mile away. So I had that long period of time where I was working out a lot more because there was a lot of the time that the rivers weren't running. But by the time we still got to the point where the river's going all the time, I didn't necessarily feel much different. So I think for me, it's as long as I'm able to go kayaking, I know that's where I'd rather be focusing my time. Yeah. And then if I'm not kayaking, I'd rather use that time to, learn something new in Illustrator, work on a new shirt, or be editing videos or things like that.
Totally.
And it's going to be situation based. I'm sure it'll adjust. And I think a big part of it is definitely that by being able to go kayaking all the time, I'm keeping myself in good enough shape that works for me.
And I don't like the gym either. Yeah. I hate it. Yeah. I complain all the time when I have to go. Yeah. So I get it. Yeah. I'd rather be doing the craft.
Yeah. And the biggest problem as well is that I try to avoid it, but a lot of the times when I go to the gym, I go a little too hard on the first one, and then I'm too sore to go do it properly the next time.
Classic.
It's always the big mistake. It's very hard for me to hold back. Yeah. But a big aspect is that's definitely something I make the mistake of when I'm like, oh, this is my one gym workout, go too hard, and then I'm too sore.
Yeah, you and every extreme athlete.
Yeah. But I do love the feeling of feeling like you're getting stronger, which I've a few times that I've consistently gone to the gym. I do like that feeling, but I'd rather be on the water or doing something else.
Totally. So something else that you've mentioned a lot, what's your fiance's name?
Chloe,
that's right. It's, and I know because I know I've put Carson through a lot, that being with an elite athlete, like, it's hard sometimes. Is she a kayaker?
She is not. No, she's an administrative assistant for a stuffed animal company, so she can work remote. So as long as there's Wi-Fi, she can go everywhere I go.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's awesome.
But how do you, balance that with her? You're not only need to go kayaking all the time for your profession, but also just a need that you have in your bones to go kayaking all the time. Has it been, I love getting into the relationship dynamic because it's a huge thing that people don't realize. Yeah. Without Carson, I could not do what I'm doing. Right. It's really freaking amazing how he supports me, and I'm sure it's awesome. The same with your fiance.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, a lot of people probably just kind of see that the glamorous, they just get to travel all the time and go where we want. But the biggest thing is, I think the amazing part of why it works, it just supports me as I am and the things I want to do. And we jumped right into, we've known each other for about 7 years, and we met at a kayaking event a long time ago. But we got together right at the end of 2020, and I left for that winter, but when I came back, we basically moved directly into the RV, trial by fire, a 32-foot travel trailer. Especially for her, she was moving out of an apartment, so that was an adjustment, but we went straight into it. But the biggest thing is that obviously there's things that I try to focus on more now, but in the end, I still get to go all over the world, whether with her or the occasional once or twice a year that she's not with me. I'm still going to all these places, and a lot of the places she's going with me, it's fun for me because I'm going kayaking, but it's not always the most glamorous for her. So the biggest thing that I'm always so appreciative of is that she supports me as a lifestyle is, and most of the time it's always going to the amazing places, but I know that it's very difficult to be with someone like me because you never know where we're going to move the next day. It's oh crap, okay, we need to rush out this way. Oh, you're leaving for 2 weeks starting tomorrow. Oh, that river's coming in. It's there's a lot of challenging aspects, and she's always been really supportive of it. And the biggest thing for me is I tried to, and even just the fact that I'm an extreme athlete, there's always got to be that I'm out doing the kayaking, but she's back home, and there's always that
In the office.
nervousness of like,
Yeah.
I'm going to do something scary.
Totally.
But she'd always been supportive of that as well. Like she'd even watch me run a couple big waterfalls and stuff, and just like, oh yeah, whatever, it's chill, it's like fun. Like that was actually when we first got together. Was when I came and ran Rainbow Falls. Hawaii was our first trip together in 2021, and she just filmed me running Rainbow, and everyone was like, aren't you just terrified? She was like, no, not really. Chill. I know he makes good
safe,
decisions.
yeah.
And I'm sure she's probably nervous more of the time than she tells me, but. But the biggest thing is I try to also focus on that what's great is that because she doesn't do whitewater kayaking, what it means is I can go do the kayaking, I can go do what I need to do. And then when we come back, we can just spend time together, whether doing something that she likes or even as simple as just hanging out, playing backgammon or something like that. So having that contrast and balance, I think it's been really, it's been amazing and a big part of why I'm very appreciative of how our lives have started to form.
Yeah.
And it's basically been right from the beginning, and there are things that we've learned how to be together, obviously, and make it work. But my biggest goal is to, because she's so supportive of like, yeah, I'll go sit in a place that's not as glamorous for 2 weeks while you go kayaking every day. I try to find ways to still make her time enjoyable and spend time together. And I think I think that would be a lot trickier if she was a whitewater kayaker. I think the fact that she doesn't do it makes it really nice, because I go do what I do, come back, and we get to do a lot of amazing things together.
Yeah.
And I haven't had to change my life. Of course, there are variables that have changed and things I focus more on to keep her happy. But the fact that she just kind of accepted our lifestyle for what it was and who I am, allowed me to just continue to do what I do. And the fact that now I have someone to do it, to go to these amazing places with, is also incredible. So yeah,
That's
always
so
been
amazing.
super appreciative of that, and that's why I'm marrying her.
Awesome. That's so cool. I have 2 RV questions. As someone who's tried to do the van stuff, what's the Wi-Fi setup in there?
So the Wi-Fi was always a struggle for a while. We tried phone hotspot, but that always goes fast, especially when you're uploading YouTube. And then a lot of the time, going into friends' houses, but at a certain point you feel like you're imposing. But now they're starting last year, I guess 2 years ago now, Starlink has been game changing, because a lot of the time when I would need to go kayaking, obviously we end up in places that there's not Wi-Fi, at least maybe for a week or something like that. Or you have to go like chase it down at a cafe. But that made it a little trickier for having Chloe travel with me, because if there wasn't Wi-Fi, she couldn't work.
Yeah.
So that was one of the tricky parts for a little while, and we always would try to find a way to make it work, but it got tricky. So a lot of times I would have to leave her if there wasn't Wi-Fi. But now we have Starlink. Now we have Wi-Fi everywhere, all over the U.S. and Canada. Now, as long as we have power, we got Wi-Fi, and we can go a lot more places together now. So yeah, Starlink was game-changing for living in an RV, and it's highly recommended. I think I recommend it for people that are in houses.
I'm thinking about getting Starlink because our Wi-Fi is not that good at our house, and it's really hard to get good Wi-Fi.
Game-changing. I mean, I don't know what it would be like where you're at, but in the end, like, we've been in the middle of places with no phone service and the Wi-Fi works. But it's perfect because it's I mean, I feel like it's a Starlink ad now, but it's like, it was game changing because we live year round in the RV. Even when we're back home in Tennessee, we're still in the RV, so we're actually full time in the RV. Just the fact that now we have Wi-Fi everywhere we go, it's way better for me because I can upload more videos, or it's easier to upload videos, and then she can work all she needs to work because she works year round remote and go everywhere I go, and it's fantastic.
And second question, RV, super quick, who does most of the driving?
I actually do all the driving.
Nice. Yeah. Carson does 99% of it.
I do all the driving.
Yeah. What she probably is
She's
working.
the DJ.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah.
So we're about to wrap up here, and this is one of my favorite questions, and I've got 2 of them that we'll just touch on briefly because we're running out of time. But one is, what do you think sets you apart from the other kayakers? Like, you are a standout whitewater kayaker, and what is it that makes you special?
Chloe. I mean, in the end, I will never try to ever feel better. Like, I'm never going to sit there and say, like, I'm way better than that guy. I never want to, cockiness is something that I really don't like to see. And it's something I always strive to avoid at all costs, because in the end, I love kayaking. I like to go kayaking as much as possible, and I love to see other people kayaking, and I want everyone to have the best time possible, and I just want to enjoy the day to day. And so I think I guess the way to put this is, again, trying to avoid ever sounding cocky, but I think what has allowed me to have the results I've had, the opportunities I've had, and been able to do some of the more extreme things, whether it's, tricks off of waterfalls that other people might not have thought of doing. I think what has allowed me to stand out in that aspect is, one of the main things is I try to be as smart with my decision making, whether it's the actual choice to do something or the people I'm with. But I also think that I try to make sure, and I think what allows me to be at the point I'm at now is that because I'm doing every single aspect of kayaking, not only does it allow me to not burn out and make sure that I'm always excited to go kayaking, but also it allows me to, when I spend more time doing one thing, there might be something, a skill that I learn or a technique I figure out that I can then apply to something else. Like, I don't think I would be half as good I don't think I'd be half as confident in the whitewater I run if I wasn't always doing freestyle growing up. I don't think I would be good at racing if I didn't do the extreme stuff. So all of it balances each other out, and I think what helps me do what I do is that I try to focus on the best decisions, and I always make sure that everything comes at a natural time. Like, when I first got put on Rebel, and this could have been a question that stopped them from wanting me put on, but it was right when 100-foot waterfalls were starting. There were more that were starting to happen, and a friend of mine that was sponsored by Rebel had just run a 130-foot waterfall, and when I had the meeting with Rebel, I was like, just so you know, I am a freestyle kayaker. I do some waterfalls, but I don't think I'm ever going to do a 100-foot waterfall. Now, fast forward 11 years, I've done 7 or 8 or whatever it is now, but I never said to myself, I'm going to do a 100-foot waterfall. It just, as I got better doing waterfalls, I started to feel more confident in my skill, and it came at a natural time. So I didn't jump into anything before I was ready. Mm-hmm. And then it's the same thing when it comes to the tricks off of waterfalls. I hated the idea of doing tricks off of waterfalls. I still did them when I was like 10 or 11, but when it came to the bigger waterfalls, I was like, you start to eliminate all this control, a better chance of getting hurt. So I never thought I would ever want to do any tricks off a big waterfall. And then I started doing them more these days because I learned a lot of skills and control and technique. And then I realized, actually there is some more control than I thought. So I guess long-winded way of saying, I think the decision-making I allowed, it just kind of whatever feels natural and best and feels like the next step at a natural time, instead of being like, if I had said, I'm going to run a 100-foot waterfall too early, I could have gotten hurt or worse. But because I let everything come in a natural time, it helps me make the best decisions and only at a time that I feel really ready for it.
I love that answer. And I'm going to apply that to my running, honestly. And now, just for the last question, we've been shooting them quick at you, but and this one, I want you to not worry about sounding cocky. I want you to respond honestly and not worry about it. You're clearly a very humble guy, and it's been a pleasure talking to you. But what's something that you're really proud of that your fans and followers might not know?
I would say that what I'm most fired up of what I've been able to accomplish is just every aspect of the sport. I feel like I've been able to have some form of moment or moments, whether it's, I've just won my 5th world championship title, which is the most that anyone's done, which was a super exciting opportunity and something I was so fired up to do. And I've won a lot of extreme races as well. I've been able to pretty much most of the races that are on a circuit, I've had the opportunity to win. Or when it comes to waterfalls, I've run some really incredible, really big waterfalls, or even done tricks off of some really big waterfalls. So I think in the end, I am fired up that where I've gotten to, I feel like in every aspect of the sport, I've been able to have some form of special moment or best results. Which is just a fun opportunity to have, and I look forward to hopefully having more moments like that.
That's so cool. As we talked about before, the standout athletes in any sport or any medium are the people who can do it all. Yeah. Are the people that it doesn't matter what aspect or what avenue it is.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Well, any last words, Dane?
No, this has been great. Thanks for having me, and always fun to talk about all this good stuff. This has been super good, and looking forward to seeing it come out.
Woohoo, yeah, this has been a blast. And shout out to Bob for letting us use the space.
Yeah, Bob, man, yeah. Anytime you can do a podcast while looking out at the ocean, it's all good time.
I know, right? We're pretty lucky.
Yeah.
All right, shoots, guys. Thanks.
All right.
Boom. That was so fun. Way to go. You're an awesome podcaster.
try to be a